Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to make a knife out of 1,000 of these ball bearings. Alright, this is the can we're going to be using. It's 1-inch square tubing, mild steel of course, 1/8 inch thick, which means the inside diameter or width is 3/4, so not super big. Now I want it a certain length, and that length is as long as I can make it, but still have a forge welding heat over the length of it in this forge, the biggest forge that I have. The reason for that is I don't want to forge this in length any more than I have to, because I don't want to stretch those ball bearings out and lose the roundness or something close to roundness. So we're also going to have to forge this widthwise, and I'm hoping that combining those two forging directions, we're not going to end up with really elongated shapes, but something that's a little more oval or even kind of roundish. Now, one of the inherent difficulties with cans is how to keep the can from welding to the contents, unless of course you just want to grind it off, which I don't really want to do. So I don't think I'm going to be able to put a stainless steel foil in there, which I've been doing on larger cans or larger width cans. Painting probably isn't going to be that great of an idea because I don't think I can get it all the way down in there. But there's another idea that somebody has mentioned a couple of times, a couple of different people, and that is you heat the can up in the forge and create a layer of scale on the steel, and that should disallow the contents from welding to the inside. So we're going to try that. This is right at 10,000 3/16 inch 5200 steel ball bearings, and it's right under 10 pounds. So with this smaller diameter and the powdered steel we're going to incorporate, I'm really excited about the kind of pattern we can get out of this. Now, some ball bearings that I've purchased and used were clean and dry, and in this case, these ball bearings do have a oil or something on those, so we're going to go ahead and clean them off first. Alright, there it is, a long skinny can if I've ever seen one. Well, we'll see if this works. Let's throw it in the forge and heat this thing up. Okay, so here's the math on how many bearings we have in that can. So before we started, this bag weighed 9 pounds, 7.8 ounces, and based on the weight and the number of bearings in there, that means there's somewhere around 1,024, messed that up, bearings per pound. So with the weight that it now sits at, which is 8 pounds, 5.67 ounces, something like that, we have easily over 1,000 bearings in that can. Alright, what you guys just saw saw there, it startled me, and I turned the camera, the record button off really fast. My can actually blew up. The gases that were in there, as minimal as it is because we packed it full of stuff, expanded and blew that can open. It fortunately was not very severe. It was just more of a hiss and a puff. But that is why you make sure that the can is vented somehow. Now typically, a lot of times when I've done cans, I have done a lot of cans, but you know, your weld on the end isn't necessarily going to be airtight, and that's fine. But in this case it was, and I didn't put a little pinhole, you know, 16th inch hole or whatever, somewhere in the can at the end or whatever to vent those gases out, and it expanded and it blew up. So fortunately in this case it was not severe, and that's great, but that's a lesson learned there. So don't make that mistake. Make sure your can is vented. And I took it out real quick and just pressed it on the forge, or on the forging press a little bit, because now after the can was compromised, I didn't want to start, you know, having our bearings and steel in there be affected by the atmosphere. So I'm going to heat it back up, and we'll do some more welding passes on it here. Obviously not is it only dangerous to have a can that might explode, however minimal that could be. The other issue here is that that can was stretched out because of the expanding gases, and so it wasn't really holding our contents in nice and tight like they were when we packed them in there. So I'm really hoping that this is not an expensive lesson here and we don't have to redo this whole thing over again. But we'll get it forged out here and see what it looks like, and hopefully we dodge the bullet on this one. Alright, well there it is, hopefully. Hopefully that was a successful weld and everything like that. Yeah, that can popping like that was a good little lesson. So right here is where it, right in there is where it split open. You can't really see it now, but the can doesn't act like it's welded to the contents, so I'm really hoping that our scale method worked. And let this cool down and we'll try to peel that can off. Okay, well, it does not appear that our scale method worked to keep the can from welding to the contents, so it looks like I'm going to be grinding all this off, which is not what I wanted to do, but oh well, we'll use a different method next time. Okay, well, it could be worse, but it could be better too. So I think my oversight on venting the can may have caused us some problems that we didn't need to put up with, in that we've got porosity and some gaps, particularly along the edge here. This also could be due to the fact that I wasn't using squaring dies. I don't have any squaring dies small enough to use on 1-inch bar, and I didn't make any. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to douse it down with some WD-40, put it back in the forge, and we'll press it out at a nice hot temperature and try to get whatever inclusions that are out. And then I may cut it up and restack it and re-weld it, just to kind of work the steel a little more and work out whatever might be on the edges. I don't know, we'll see what happens. Alright guys, well I have this forged out to about 3/16 inch thick, and yeah, it's looking a little rough. I don't think I want to make a knife out of this, at least not by itself, but all is not lost because we can do a laminate blade, so that's what we're going to do. Alright, well you can kind of see where it starts to become a solid piece of steel a little ways in from the edge here on these pieces. So definitely redeemable, and I would be comfortable making a blade with this steel, you know, grinding off the outside here now that I'm, you know, clean that up and I can see what's going on. But I want to make a bigger blade, so we're going to continue on with our sanmai or laminate construction. Alright, so we have this cleaned up down to a nice solid piece of steel. So you can see these edges are not straight, and the reason is because I had to chase a few little lines just where, you know, our arc weld was holding things in place and it didn't forge weld. But this is a solid piece of steel now, and I'll just go ahead and forge this out straight, and that will distort the pattern a little bit, but because of the type of pattern, I'm not worried about that anyway. So let's get this straightened out, and we're getting close to being able to make it into a blade. Alright guys, we have our blade blanked out, so to speak. On these laminate or sanmai type builds, I don't forge the bevels. You just have a flat bar of steel so that when you grind in your bevels, you're going to reveal the contents of that steel, and of course your blade steel is going to show around the edge of the knife. So what we're going to build with this is a dagger, and this project has had a few ups and downs, but we're rolling with it, and we're going to make a cool blade still, hopefully. I think we will. So the next thing I need to do is normalize this and true it up, and then we can actually profile out the blade and then heat treat it and go from there. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and clean off one side here, and we'll get a sneak peek of what the pattern looks like and see how our ball bearings are doing. Alright, there it is. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. Like I said earlier, I don't want a super stretched out pattern here, so these are looking pretty good. Some of them are fairly round, and there's some more elongated ones, so pretty neat. You can still see some spots here where we don't have a good weld around some of those bearings. Not a problem, that's going to come out because of our bevel, and of course we have a solid piece of steel for our edge. You can kind of see that right here in this section. That's our 52-100 right there. So this is going to work out pretty good, I think, and we're going to get a neat blade out of this. Anyway guys, I appreciate you watching. Stay tuned for part 2. A lot more cool things to do with this project, and I will see you on the next video.